What if the person sitting across from you, the one you've been helping for years, was hiding the darkest secret imaginable? What if that secret was about you? Welcome to another story with a twist ending that will leave you speechless. If you enjoy these psychological thrillers, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring you more mind-bending stories like this one. Now, let's dive into Patient Confesses Dark Secret in Final Therapy Session.
The wall clock emitted its monotonous tick-tock, each second marking the end of an era. Dr. Alan Carter, 52 years old, graying hair at the temples and tired eyes behind gold-framed glasses, observed his office for the last time as an active therapist. The sand-colored walls, the framed diplomas, the bookshelf filled with books about the human mind, all of it would soon be just memory. 28 years of career, thousands of patients, countless stories of pain, trauma, overcoming. And now, at 52, he was finally allowing himself to rest. Retirement awaited him like a safe harbor after decades navigating the emotional storms of others. He straightened the documents on the mahogany desk, organizing files that would be archived, notes that would be destroyed as required by professional confidentiality. His last patient of the day and of his career would arrive in 15 minutes. John Mitchell, 45 years old, successful businessman in the real estate industry. 10 years of uninterrupted therapy. 520 punctual sessions, always on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. sharp. John had arrived at the office a decade ago, in 2015, with a classic case of generalized anxiety disorder and depressive episodes. Frequent panic attacks, chronic insomnia, constant sensation of disproportionate guilt. Alan remembered the first session. John sitting in that same leather armchair, nervously wringing his hands, sweating cold, describing how he felt his chest tighten for no apparent reason. The treatment had been long and complex. Cognitive behavioral therapy, some periods with psychiatric medication supervised by a colleague, mindfulness techniques. And it worked, or at least it seemed to have worked. John transformed over the years. The panic attacks ceased, sleep improved, the diffuse sensation of guilt diminished. He expanded his business, traveled the world, even started dating again after years alone. It was one of the success cases that Alan would proudly keep in his memory. The reception bell rang punctually at 6 p.m. Alan smiled. John was always punctual. He pressed the button that unlocked the entrance door. His secretary had already left, this being the last session of the day. Firm steps in the hallway. The door opened. John entered with his usual erect posture, impeccable gray suit, leather briefcase under his arm. But there was something different about his face. A tension that Alan hadn't seen in years. His eyes avoided direct contact.
Good evening, John. Our last session. Hard to believe we've reached this point, isn't it?
John sat down, but didn't relax as he usually did. He remained on the edge of the armchair, hands clasped tightly, knuckles whitened by the pressure.
Dr. Carter, I need to say something before you retire. Something I've never told you in all these 10 years.
Alan leaned slightly forward, assuming his professional listening posture.
I'm listening, John. This is a safe space. Always has been.
A heavy silence filled the room. The clock continued its relentless tick-tock. John breathed deeply several times, as if preparing to dive into deep waters.
I lied to you. Since the first session, I lied. I never had anxiety, Dr. Carter. Never had depression. Not in the clinical sense. Everything I described was real. the panic attacks, the insomnia, the guilt, but they weren't symptoms of a disease. They were consequences. Consequences of what I did.
Alan felt a chill run down his spine. Decades of experience had taught him to recognize when a patient was about to reveal something significant. But there was something in John's voice, in the tension of his body, that set off all internal alarms.
Continue.
John closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering courage. When he opened them again, there were tears there.
15 years ago, in March 2010, I hit a woman with my car.
The confession came out like a shot in the silence of the office.
It was a Tuesday night, around 10:30 p.m. I was coming back from a business dinner in Jardins. I'd been drinking. I wasn't completely drunk, but I was over the limit. I knew I shouldn't drive, but I did anyway. I always did. It had never been a problem before.
Alan felt his hands begin to tremble imperceptibly. He intertwined them in his lap, hiding the reaction. His mind was already making connections that he desperately wanted to be coincidence.
The street was poorly lit. She appeared out of nowhere, crossing outside the crosswalk. I didn't even try to brake. I didn't have time. I heard the sound of impact, that horrible sound. I saw through the rearview mirror the body falling on the sidewalk. And I didn't stop, Doctor. I accelerated. I fled. I simply fled from that scene and never looked back. I arrived home terrified. I hid the car in the garage. The next day, I skipped work and took the car to a shop in New York. I made up a story that I'd hit a post. I paid in cash to leave no trace. Then I invented a last-minute business trip to have an alibi.
And the woman? What happened to the woman?
She died. I read it in the newspapers the next day. Died on the spot. The police looked for the driver for weeks. They interviewed people in the area. They never came close to me. The case went cold. They filed it as an unsolved hit and run. And I went on with my life. On the outside, I went on with my life. On the inside...
On the inside, you died with her.
Yes, exactly. The panic attacks started weeks later. The insomnia came next. The guilt. The guilt never went away, Doctor. Never. Every night I saw that scene. Every time I closed my eyes. For 5 years, I lived in hell.
What was her name? The woman you hit?
I didn't know the name, Doctor. Not immediately. The newspapers at the time didn't disclose it. Just 48-year-old woman. But 5 years later, when I couldn't take it anymore and started looking for psychological help, I did something. Something terrible and necessary at the same time.
What did you do, John?
I researched. I went through newspapers from the time, crossed information, identified the victim through obituaries. And when I discovered her name, I researched more. I found out she was married, that she had 2 grown children, that she worked as a literature teacher. And I discovered that her husband was a psychotherapist, a therapist specialized in anxiety disorders.
The world stopped. The tick-tock of the clock disappeared. The sound of traffic outside vanished. All that existed was that office, those 2 chairs, and the devastating truth suspended between them like a blade.
You...
Alan couldn't complete the sentence. He stood up abruptly, his chair hitting the wall behind. His legs trembled. He held the edge of the desk to keep from falling. John also stood up, but kept his distance, as if expecting Alan to advance on him.
10 years ago, I read an article in the American Journal of Psychotherapy about the best therapists in America for anxiety disorders. You were on the list. But what really caught my attention was a small biographical note at the end of the article. It said that Dr. Alan Carter had faced personal tragedy when he lost his wife, Sarah Carter, in a hit-and-run accident in March 2010. Driver never identified.
The name echoed in Alan's mind like a scream in a canyon. Sarah, who laughed while cooking lasagna. Sarah, who left love notes hidden in his psychology books. Sarah, who hummed Frank Sinatra in the shower. Sarah, who died alone on a cold sidewalk on Augusta Street while he was at a conference in Curitiba presenting a paper on emotional resilience. The irony was so raw it almost pulled a hysterical laugh from his throat.
You came to therapy with me, knowing that I was the husband of the woman you killed.
Yes. I came because I couldn't turn myself in to the police. I tried. I swear I tried. I went to a police station 3 times. I stayed in the parking lot with the car running, rehearsing what I would say. But I couldn't get out of the car. The fear, the cowardice, the will to preserve my life. Everything was greater than my desire for justice.
So you came to confess to me in disguised form for 10 years.
Alan felt anger, confusion, pain, all mixed in an emotional storm that threatened to destroy decades of self-control built through personal analysis and meditation.
Every session was about that night, Doctor. Every panic attack I described was real, but it was guilt, not disease. Every nightmare was that scene. Every sensation of disproportionate guilt I reported wasn't disproportionate. It was perfectly proportional to what I had done. I was confessing to you in code, hoping you would notice, that you would connect the dots, that you would denounce me.
You wanted me to do what you didn't have the courage to do alone.
Alan's voice was loaded with a mixture of disbelief and contained anger.
You put the burden of decision on me.
It wasn't just that. I needed to know you. I needed to know who the man married to the woman I killed was. I needed to understand if you were a good person, if Sarah had been loved, if my action had destroyed something valuable or just another life.
And what did you conclude?
That I destroyed everything.
John collapsed back into the armchair, burying his face in his hands.
Sarah was loved. You were devastated. Your children were devastated. I read about how you almost abandoned the profession right after. How you dove into work to escape the pain. How you never married again. I took everything from you, Dr. Carter. And then, cowardly, I came here seeking what? Forgiveness? Punishment? I don't even know anymore.
Alan walked to the window, looking at the city that stretched out there, lights beginning to turn on in the growing twilight. Sarah used to love the sunset. They had a ritual of watching it together from the balcony of the apartment where they lived. She with a cup of chamomile tea, he with his coffee without sugar. 15 years. 15 years searching for answers. 15 years imagining who had taken Sarah from him. 15 years fantasizing about what he would say if he ever found the person responsible. And now, there he was. He wasn't a monster. He was just a man, a weak man, who made a terrible mistake and didn't have the courage to face it.
I thought about you every day, you know. Not you specifically because I didn't know who it was, but the driver. I created versions of you in my head. Sometimes you were a remorseless monster. Other times, a scared teenager. Once, I convinced myself it had been an accident, that you'd suffered a heart attack at the wheel. I created narratives to cope with not having answers.
And now you have answers. What are you going to do with them?
Alan finally turned. His face was wet with tears he hadn't even noticed shedding. He walked to his desk, picked up the phone. His fingers hovered over the numbers. 911. Police. It would be so simple. Dial 3 numbers. 15 years of mystery solved. Justice finally served. John would be arrested, prosecuted, convicted. Maybe 7, 8 years in prison for vehicular manslaughter with fleeing the scene. His career destroyed, his life ruined. But would that bring Sarah back? Alan looked at the phone in his hand as if it were an alien object. And then, slowly, he placed it back on the hook.
I'm not gonna call the police.
What? Why? I killed your wife. I deserve...
You think I haven't thought about that? You think that every second since you started this confession, I haven't imagined you being handcuffed, taken away, punished? But you know what happens if I do that, John?
Alan walked until he was face to face with John, looking directly into his eyes.
If I report you now, the last 10 years of my life become a lie. 520 hours we spent together, all the sessions, all the progress I thought you were making, all the times I felt proud for having helped someone. It all reduces to a farce, an elaborate confession disguised as therapy. And I can't accept that, John. I need to believe that my work meant something, that I helped real people, that not everything in my professional life was built on lies and manipulation.
But I manipulated you.
Yes, you did. And I'll have to live with that, just as you'll have to live with what you did.
Alan returned to his chair, sitting heavily. Suddenly, he felt the weight of each of his 52 years.
John, do you think reporting you will bring you peace? Do you think prison will wash away your guilt?
I don't know. But I need to pay for what I did.
You're already paying. For 15 years, you killed Sarah that night, but you also killed John Mitchell. The man you were before that accident died with her. You spent 15 years in an invisible prison, tortured by guilt, unable to live fully, always looking over your shoulder. And then, at the height of cowardice or desperation, I don't know which, you spent 10 years coming here, confessing in code, begging for absolution or condemnation, anything that would free you from this purgatory.
That's not justice, Doctor. Sarah deserves justice.
Sarah is dead, John. Nothing we do now will change that. Nothing. I could report you, you could be arrested, and Sarah would still be dead. Our children would still be without a mother. I would still be alone. The only difference is that you would be in a literal prison instead of a figurative one, and I would have turned my last decade of work into ashes.
So you're just gonna let me walk away?
It's not about letting you walk away, John. It's about me freeing myself. Because holding on to this hatred, seeking revenge, keeping you hostage to this guilt, that keeps me chained to that night as much as it keeps you. Sarah won't come back, but I'm still alive, and I need to make a choice. Am I gonna spend the rest of my life trapped in the anger and pain of the past? Or am I going to allow myself to finally move forward? I choose to free myself. And the only way to do that is through forgiveness. Not because you deserve it, John. You don't deserve it. You took from me the person I loved most in the world. You stole from her dozens of years of life we should have lived together. You deprived our children of having their mother at their weddings with their grandchildren. You caused immeasurable pain that echoed through countless lives, and there's no forgiveness big enough for that.
Then why?
Because forgiveness isn't about you. It's about me. It's about me not letting that night in March 2010 define the rest of my existence. It's about me not allowing your cowardice, your mistake, your guilt to become the gravitational center of my life. Sarah deserved more than that. She deserved to be remembered for the joy she brought, for the love she shared, for the dedicated teacher she was, not for being the victim of a drunk driver.
I don't know if I can live with this. With you forgiving me when I should be punished.
Then that's your choice to make, John, not mine. You can walk out that door and go straight to a police station. You can turn yourself in, confess everything, face the legal consequences. Or you can leave and try to find some form of redemption, to live a life that honors Sarah's memory in some way. Volunteer work, helping others, it doesn't matter. Or you can simply keep living with this guilt for the rest of your life. Any of these choices is yours. It always was. You just wanted me to do for you what you didn't have the courage to do alone.
John walked slowly toward the door, his steps heavy like those of a man marching to execution. He stopped beside Alan without looking at him.
How do you do it? How can you forgive me?
Alan finally looked at John, and in his eyes there was a complexity of emotions impossible to untangle. Pain, anger, compassion, exhaustion, acceptance.
I don't forgive what you did, John. I never will. But I forgive you, the man, the flawed human being who made a terrible mistake and didn't have the courage to face it. Because in the end, you and I aren't so different. We're both prisoners of that night. We both had our lives irrevocably altered. The difference is that I'm choosing to be free, and you need to decide if you'll allow yourself the same freedom, or if you'll spend the rest of your life as a tormented ghost.
I don't deserve freedom.
Probably not, but Sarah deserved to live. And she's not here, so someone has to choose life. Someone has to choose to move forward, because if we both remain trapped in the past, then that night really killed 3 people, not just 1.
John finally looked at Alan, and in his eyes there was a painful gratitude mixed with a weight that clearly would never completely go away.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. And I'm sorry, more than any words can express.
I know. Session's over, John. Don't come back. This office closes today. And whatever you decide to do from here on, I don't want to know. We need to end this here, now, definitively.
John nodded, swallowing hard, and crossed the threshold of the door. His steps echoed through the empty hallway. Alan watched his silhouette move away, get smaller, until it disappeared around the corner leading to the elevator. Alan closed the door. For a long moment, he just stood there, leaning against the cold wood, eyes closed, breathing deeply. His entire body trembled. Decades of emotional control built through personal therapy, meditation, and professionalism were crumbling like a house of cards. He walked to his chair and sat down, looking at the office that had been his second home for almost 3 decades. The moisture stains in the corner of the ceiling he'd never fixed, the leather armchair that Sarah had helped choose when he opened the office, the peace lily plant she'd given as an opening gift and that, miraculously, was still alive after all these years. Sarah. He had spent 15 years imagining that if he ever discovered who had taken Sarah from him, he would feel satisfaction with justice being done. But now, having the culprit literally in his hands, having all the answers he'd sought for so long, he felt only empty, exhausted, old. Justice wouldn't bring Sarah back. Revenge wouldn't diminish the pain. Forgiveness wouldn't erase the past. All that remained was the choice, stay trapped or move forward. And he had chosen.
I hope I made the right choice, my love. I hope you understand.
He carefully stored the photo in his briefcase, turned off the lights, locked the door for the last time. Outside, sitting on a bench in a square in front of the building, John held his cell phone with trembling hands. The screen illuminated his face in the growing dusk. The 3 numbers typed, waiting only for him to press the call button. 15 years running, 10 years confessing in code, and now the unexpected absolution from the one who should least give it. His finger hovered over the button. A couple passed pushing a baby stroller, laughing about something. A man walked a dog, life following its normal flow, oblivious to the silent drama happening on that park bench. The sun finished setting, leaving only the artificial lights of the city. And John remained there, motionless, the phone in his hand. No one ever knew which choice he made that night. But inside the building he was now leaving behind, Alan Carter finally allowed himself to cry, not for the justice he didn't seek, but for the freedom he finally found.
If you enjoy these psychological thrillers, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring you more mind-bending stories like this one.